Welcome back to our channel, dear viewers. If you're new here, subscribe and join us for stories that tug at your heart and leave you breathless. May your day be filled with unexpected blessings, and may love find you in the most surprising ways. Now let's begin. In the shadowy corners of a velvet-lit bar, where neon dreams flickered across smoky mirrors, Rosa Parks danced, not for pleasure, but for survival. Her eyes held secrets too heavy for her youth, her smile trained, but never quite reaching her soul. She wasn't there to seduce, but to survive, to pay rent, to eat, to protect the last slivers of dignity life had left her. But to Aiden Merrim, the city's most feared billionaire CEO, she was just another body in glittering disguise, a call girl with a pretty face and a price tag. He watched her one night from his exclusive VIP corner, sipping scotch as if the world were his chessboard. And when she dared to lock eyes with him, just a second too long, he made a move. "Come with me," he commanded, voice like cold steel. Rosa blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" He slid a black card across the table toward her. "I know what you are. Name your price." Her stomach twisted. "You don't know anything about me," she said softly, backing away. But he smirked. "Don't play coy. You're all the same." That was the first time she slapped him. Hard. And that was the first time a woman had ever dared to. But fate, cruel, strange, divine, wasn't done with them. The very next morning, Rosa showed up at Merrim Holdings for a side gig her friend had secured for her. A day job filing records for the company's charity division. And when Aiden stepped out of the elevator and saw her there, in her oversized sweater, no makeup, no music, just paperwork in hand, his world tilted. "You," he said. "Unfortunately," she muttered, not looking up. But from that moment on, Aiden couldn't stop watching, couldn't stop wondering, couldn't understand why the woman he met last night looked nothing like this one. No heels, no fake laugh, no perfume, just real. He tried to corner her again. "If you needed money, there are better ways, then—" She cut him off, furious. "Do you always assume the worst about people? Or is it just easier than admitting you were wrong?" Aiden stared at her, lips parted. For once, he had no comeback. Weeks passed, and slowly the ice between them cracked. He started bringing her coffee. She ignored him. He started walking her to the bus stop. She rolled her eyes. He started asking about her dreams. She told him to be left alone. But one rainy night, she showed up late for work, soaked and shivering, and he, Mr. I Feel Nothing Merrim, handed her his coat without a word. That night she finally said, "You don't know anything about me, but you act like you do." "Why?" "Because I want to," he said, his voice low, barely audible. "I want to know everything about you." Then came the night everything shattered. She had to perform again. Bills were due, and when Aiden walked into the bar and saw her on stage, his face darkened, not with lust but betrayal. Afterward, he followed her outside, rage simmering. "I thought you were different," he spat. "Turns out you really are just a—" She slapped him again, and through tears she screamed, "You don't get to shame me for how I survive. You think this is who I am? You think I chose this?" She ran before he could reply. But what he didn't know, what he would later find out in the most agonizing way, was that she'd never once sold herself to anyone. Never let a man touch her. Not for money, not for pleasure, not even for love. She was still a virgin. It was his assistant who told him, accidentally, weeks later, that Rosa was working 2 jobs, that she lived with her sick mother in a one-room flat, that every cent went to medicine, and that no man had ever been inside her heart or her bed. The shame hit him like a freight train. He rushed to her apartment. She wouldn't open the door. He stood outside in the rain for hours. "Rosa," he whispered through the door. "Please, I was wrong. I was so wrong." Silence. "I'll kneel if I have to. I'll beg. Don't shut me out. Not now. Not when I know the truth." A soft sob escaped from inside. "Why does it matter now?" she said, broken. "You already judged me." "Because I'm in love with you, and I hate the man I was before I met you." He showed up every day after that, waiting, apologizing, bringing soup, books, flowers from her mother's favorite park. And one day, she opened the door, just a little. "You really love me?" she asked. "I do," he whispered, "more than I've ever loved anything in my life." She stepped aside, and in that moment, forgiveness didn't need words. It needed time, trust, healing. He never touched her until she asked, never kissed her until she reached for him, never made love to her until she whispered, "I want you, and I trust you." And when it happened, it was not rushed, not lustful. It was slow, reverent, like worship. And for the first time in his life, Aiden Merrim cried, because love had broken him, rebuilt him, and made him whole again. Or a particularly well-written line in a book managed to touch something within her. Slowly, with these quiet observations, Aiden realized just how little he truly knew about Rosa, how much he had taken for granted. And so he began to bridge the gap, not with grand declarations or extravagant gifts, but with small, meaningful gestures that spoke louder than any words ever could. He started with handwritten apologies, words he struggled to put on paper, words born from a place he had never allowed himself to explore. He left them where she would find them, on her bedside table, on the kitchen counter, tucked gently between the pages of the books he knew she loved. Each note carried the weight of his regret. "I was wrong about you," one read. "I see that now, and I'm sorry." Another simply said, "You deserved better than how I treated you. I'm going to try to be better." At first, Rosa didn't acknowledge them, didn't respond, but she never threw them away. They remained exactly where he left them, as if she didn't know what to do with them, unsure whether to believe in his change of heart. Encouraged, he took another step. Flowers. Not just any flowers, but the ones he'd once seen her admire. The ones that had brought a glimmer of happiness to her otherwise quiet expression. He made sure fresh bouquets were always in the house, placed in vases she'd passed during her daily routine. Silent reminders that he was watching, that he was learning. He paid attention. Her favorite tea appeared in the cabinet. Lavender filled her room each evening. The softest blankets waited for colder nights. He adjusted the lighting in her room to the warm hues she liked. The kitchen was stocked with her favorite fruits. The music in the background had shifted, from classical orchestras to the soft, soulful instrumentals she once hummed along to. Still, Rosa remained cautious. She didn't push him away, but she didn't welcome him in either. Her silence had lost its bite, but a wall still stood between them, transparent but unbroken. She accepted his gestures, but her eyes stayed guarded. And yet Aiden didn't falter, because he understood now. Trust couldn't be forced. It couldn't be bought. It had to be earned, slowly, steadily, with consistency, with patience, with genuine effort. So he continued, without expectation of forgiveness, without hope of reward. He simply tried. He wanted to show her that he was no longer the man who had hurt her, that he could change. As the days passed, he noticed small shifts, subtle, almost imperceptible, but real. She didn't flee his presence anymore. Sometimes she lingered in the same room, just long enough for him to catch his breath and believe that maybe he was reaching her. She replied when he spoke, her tone still cautious, but not cold. One evening, as he passed the library, he saw her sitting by the window, her fingers tracing the petals of the flowers he had placed there. She didn't smile, but there was something softer in her eyes, a flicker of something unspoken. And for the first time, Aiden Merrim, once a man ruled by power and pride, found himself willing to wait, willing to do the work, willing to fight for something that truly mattered. Rosa stood still, her breath caught between hesitation and hope. The man who once bargained for her virginity, who ruled his world with cold logic and ruthless ambition, was now looking at her not as a possession, but as the woman he had fallen deeply in love with. Not the CEO, not the tycoon, just Aiden, a man stripped of pride, standing in front of her with trembling vulnerability. She didn't respond immediately, but she didn't pull away either. And that was enough for Aiden. In her silence, he found the tiniest flicker of warmth in her eyes, a flicker of something he had longed to see. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they weren't lost. That somewhere beneath the scars of betrayal and hurt, Something still lived between them. Words would never be enough. Aiden knew that. No apology could erase the past. No confession could undo the damage. But he would prove himself, not with promises, but with presence, with love, with sincerity. For days he had thought of nothing else. What could he do that would reach her? What could he offer her that would be worthy of her pain? Then he remembered. Rosa once spoke of a place, hidden in the mountains, where the world melted away. A quiet haven where she had always dreamed of going. A place where the noise couldn't follow her. So he planned everything, not with grandeur, but with intention. And when the day came, he drove her there in silence. The road twisted through forests and over hills. The only sounds the soft hum of the car and the thunder of unspoken things between them. Rosa didn't know where they were going, but she felt something in him had shifted. Something soft, something real. They arrived just before sunset. Aiden led her to a small clearing that overlooked the mountains, the sky painted in hues of violet and gold. The air was still. The wind whispered through the trees. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Rosa stared at the view, mesmerized. For the first time in a long time, she felt peace. Not total, but enough to let her guard down. Just a little. Aiden stood beside her, silent, present. And then, without a word, he pulled a small envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. His fingers brushed hers, a fleeting touch, but filled with trembling emotion. Rosa looked at it, curious, cautious, then slowly opened it. A letter, written in his unmistakable hand. She read it in silence. His words were not poetic, but they were honest, raw, unfiltered. He spoke of guilt that haunted his every breath, of the shame he felt when he remembered the way he had treated her, of nights spent staring at the ceiling, haunted by the pain in her eyes. He confessed everything, not to earn pity, but because the truth had to be laid bare. And he spoke of love, not the love of possession, but of cherishing, of wanting to build something sacred with her, of wanting to become the man she deserved, not just for a day, but for a lifetime. Rosa's fingers trembled as she held the letter, tears clouding her vision. When she finally looked up, her eyes shimmered with unshed emotion. "You've changed," she whispered, voice fragile and full of disbelief. Aiden's heart thundered. "Because of you," he replied, stepping closer, his voice cracking. "You made me see who I was and who I want to be. I never thought I could love like this, but I do. I love you, Rosa, and I want to be the man you can trust again." The air between them tightened. The stars blinked into the darkening sky above, silent witnesses to the moment that might change everything. Rosa's heart warred with itself. There were wounds, deep ones, but there was also something undeniable growing inside her, something warm, something terrifying. She didn't say it, not yet, but in the way she looked at him, Aiden saw it, the beginning of forgiveness, the fragile possibility of love reborn. Something simple like her favorite fruit or a steaming cup of coffee, just the way she liked it. Aiden's acts of love weren't limited to grand gestures. They were woven into the fabric of everyday life. Whether it was holding her hand during their walks, comforting her after a tough day, or simply being there when she needed him without being asked, he proved time and again that he was no longer the man who once made her feel small, insignificant, or unwanted. Slowly but surely, Rosa began to let her walls down. She found herself laughing more, an easy, unguarded laugh that filled their home with warmth. It wasn't tinged with bitterness or pain anymore. It came from the heart. Aiden had become a part of her world in ways she hadn't thought possible. Even when doubts crept in, even when shadows of the past lingered at the edge of her heart, she couldn't deny it. He had changed. More importantly, he showed her every single day that he was worth her love, that he would never take her for granted again, that she was his priority. Rosa had always been careful with her heart. She had guarded it like a fragile treasure, afraid of being broken again. But something inside her was shifting. This wasn't a sudden, overwhelming rush. It was a steady warmth blooming in her chest, a quiet certainty. She had fallen in love with Aiden, and it showed in the way he touched her, the tenderness of his words, the way his eyes always found hers like she was the most important person in his world. The love they once fought against, the love that had felt too complicated, too painful, had grown into something deep, undeniable, and soul-stirring. Their bond was stronger now. No more doubts, no more questions, only quiet promises spoken through actions, not words. Rosa could no longer pretend. She loved him. And Aiden? He loved her in a way that was unwavering, all-accepting, all-encompassing. Gone were the days of resistance, of fear. What they had was beautiful, born not out of perfection, but out of patience and redemption. Aiden no longer reached for her with hesitation, and Rosa no longer pulled away. She welcomed his love just as he had welcomed hers. Each day their love deepened, becoming something solid and real, built on trust, on forgiveness, on quiet understanding. And with every glance from Aiden's intense, loving eyes, Rosa's heart swelled. He supported her dreams, cherished her vulnerability, and held her with a reverence that made her feel seen, truly seen. She had given him her heart, not the broken, wounded one from their past, but a heart full of hope, love, and trust. And Aiden, he gave her everything in return. The night that changed everything. The night arrived, quiet and unexpected. Neither of them had planned for it, but both felt the pull. It wasn't the fire of confusion or resentment anymore. It was something softer, stronger. The city lights hummed below, but inside their home everything stilled. The walls that had once divided them had crumbled. The air was thick with anticipation, not tension, not fear. Just a quiet ache for one another that had been growing for so long. Aiden reached for her, cupping her face gently. No words were needed. This was a culmination of everything they had endured to reach this place. Rosa's heart pounded. Her fingers traced his jaw, her eyes memorizing him. This man who had once viewed her through cruel eyes now looked at her with nothing but adoration. As his lips brushed hers, soft and tentative at first, then deeper, every kiss they had ever shared seemed to lead to this one. His hands roamed her body with reverence. There was no rush, no doubt, just love, pure, unfiltered love. And Rosa responded in kind, touching him, holding him, matching his every movement with the tenderness of someone who had waited for this moment her whole life. They explored each other that night, not just physically but emotionally. Every whisper, every sigh was a vow, a promise, that they would choose each other every day, that the past no longer held power over them. Aiden held her like she was precious, sacred, like he never wanted to let go. Their hearts beat in sync. Their souls, once distant, wounded, were now perfectly aligned. It wasn't just passion, it was healing, it was completion. And as Rosa whispered his name, and Aiden murmured hers in return, they both knew they belonged to each other. The proposal by morning, wrapped in each other's arms, their world had changed. But Aiden had one more promise to make. He knelt before her, no pride, no arrogance, just love. True, raw, vulnerable love. "Rosa," he said, his voice shaking, "will you marry me? Not because you have to, but because you want to. Will you choose me every day, just as I will always choose you?" Tears welled in her eyes. This man, this once cold, closed-off man, had transformed. He had broken down his own walls to meet her with nothing but sincerity. He wasn't offering obligation. He was offering forever. "Yes," Rosa whispered, her voice soft but full of everything she felt. "Yes, Aiden, I will marry you." His face lit up, and he stood, lifting her into his arms. Their kiss was not just a seal of love. It was a seal of their future. Together, always. No more walls, no more wounds. Only love, undeniable, unshakable, and eternal.